Hey all, welcome back for Hidden Messages in Media. Today's topic is incredibly important, and this is probably going to be drawn out unless little one wakes up and interrupts. But today we're going to be talking about kids' movies or TV shows and subliminal messaging for children, okay? My dogs are in here scratching themselves like crazy people. My son is asleep, so I can't be too loud. But here we go. Alright. If you don't have the workbook, you can get the workbook in the description box below. If you want a PDF copy to print, you can just email me and I will send you the link. So, here is our page for children's movies. It is TV shows and other children programming as well that I'm talking about, but movies are what we're going to start with. Sex sells. Yes, marketing towards children. Oh my gosh, I have a typo. How embarrassing. Marketing towards children. And listed here, we have The Little Mermaid from the 90s, when the priest gets a boner. So this shit came out when I was in like 4th or 5th grade. We started analyzing the kids. We started analyzing our childhood movies because it came out that there were very sex-centered things in these movies. And we were little researchers, little conspiracy theorists. We didn't have the internet. I don't know how this shit traveled by mouth back then. Maybe it was on a show or something. But we were all well aware of the sexual innuendos that happened. This is a picture from The Little Mermaid, and you can see the priest has a boner. And it's like just this quick ass shot when Ursula and Eric are walking down the aisle. Also, the front cover of The Little Mermaid had all of these phalluses in the castle. It's much easier to see this on not the digital copy of the workbook. And then there was Aladdin, and in this scene where they are on the balcony. Oh no, that's Lion King. My bad. The Lion King, there's the word sex written in the stars. So this was like the first conspiracy theories that I started getting on board with. And like I said, me and my friends all knew about this. Everybody knew about this shit. In Aladdin, in this scene where they're on the balcony, there's a whisper of teenagers take off your clothes. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it, right? This is kind of the same vibe I'm getting from the Led Zeppelin, or no, the Charles Manson. Was it Charles Manson? I think it was Charles Manson or Led Zeppelin. There was like some way to play the record backwards or something. I don't know. And then Toy Story. It's pretty obvious. Woody, okay? Tom Hanks is a known pedophile. He's one of the largest perpetrators in Hollywood, and that has been proven time and time again in the recent, I would say, decade. So for him to play Woody is by design, okay? Niall has never watched any of these movies. I was very strict about what Niall watched for the first few years. And we're going to talk about childhood brain development in a minute, but I really want to quickly talk about the other stuff on this main page, and then we'll go into this a little deeper. So traumatic parents' deaths are also very relevant in children's movies, okay? And we're going to talk about what that does for brain development. The Good Dinosaur, Bambi, and Nemo are 3 notable immediate death of parent in the beginning, okay? Disney bought Pixar in 2006, and since then, children's movies are more explicit and obvious. Especially these down here. Well, Bambi's old as fuck, but Nemo, so dirty, okay? So fucked up. The Good Dinosaur, I bought that for Niall, but we never watched it. I watched it and then I said, no, you're not watching this. What inappropriate things can you recall in children's movies and shows, and how were you affected? Angel, can you please get down? Angel's pregnant, so we're talking about kids. So she's here. Angel's a cat. She's the alley cat. She's so pretty. She's a beautiful calico. Okay, so I just looked up some shit on Google. First, we're going to talk about the stages of child's brain development, okay? And then we're going to talk about what happens. Okay, so from 0 to 7 is the most pivotal time for childhood brain development. Our brains develop until we're the age 25, but those first 7 years are imperative for the systems to indoctrinate children into. So there is the prenatal stage. Google is free. You can look this shit up too. From 0 to 9 months. That's the formation of new neurons. Neurons move to their appropriate locations. Formations and connections are happening, okay? Infancy, 0 to 2 years. The brain triples in size at that time. Sensory and motor development and language acquisition, okay? Early childhood is 2 to 5 years. Symbolic play and imagination, the prefrontal cortex develops, supporting complex cognitive functions, okay? Remember that specifically, okay? So between 2 to 5 years. Emotional regulation, the limbic system matures, influencing emotions and social interactions. And fine motor skills, the cerebellum and motor cortex refine motor control. So that's when we see, toddlers hitting, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a cold, I think. Anyway, one of my landlord's dudes came over and he was sick, but it was like so windy and he was very far away, but I'm pretty sure his germs got shared. Anyway, middle childhood is 6 to 11 years old. Child can understand logical rules and perform mental operations, language and literacy, and social development. The brain develops structures for empathy, social reasoning, and moral decision making. Alright, and then adolescence from 12 to 18 years, formal operations, abstract thinking, and hypothetical reasoning emerge, decision making and risk taking. The prefrontal cortex continues to mature, influencing impulse control and emotional intelligence. The brain develops the ability to understand and regulate complex emotions. Puberty is also in the last two, middle childhood and adolescence, depending on the child. It's important to note that these stages can be approximate and can vary between individuals. Environmental factors such as nutrition, education, social interactions, and play a significant role in shaping brain development. Not to mention, not even listed anywhere, media. Okay? Alright, now I want to talk about, what happens when your brain is not developed and you're met with a traumatic moment from someone else. Your empathy hasn't even developed. So what they're doing, especially with these movies that have a traumatic parent death, is they are setting the child up with false memories to extract an emotional response, which is emotional manipulation, okay? So that will put the nervous system in a space of fight or flight, especially since for like the first 2 years, that infancy stage, the child doesn't have a concept that they are separate from the mother at that point in their life. So if you are showing them a movie in which the mother dies, that can be really debilitating to their development, both emotionally and mentally, okay, and spiritually. So getting a false memory through media can be really, really traumatic, okay? I remember watching Bambi, and it fucked me up. It fucked me up. You know what else fucked me up was the Hound and the Fox and the Hound. Oh, God, those movies were awful. So, be careful what you show your children. I have stuck with PBS Kids. My son is now 5. He's gotten a little more leniency with his tablet. I don't really vet as serious as I did, but those first few years, we only did PBS Kids. That was it. And I watched the show with him or before he watched it so that I knew what was going to be exposed. We did a lot of Daniel Tiger because that was very safe. But within this, I also want to talk about the psychology of colors and how colors are used for manipulating and indoctrinating children. So, within psychology of colors, again, Google is free. You can look this up yourself. I just typed in psychology of colors. Red can evoke passion, energy, and danger and urgency. Okay? Blue can evoke calmness, trust, and tranquility. Green can evoke growth, harmony, nature, money, and prosperity. Remember that all colors are also associated with chakra points within our body. If you want to learn more about that, go to the Exploring Our Chakras playlist. We did a breakdown of each of the 7 internal chakra systems. And starting from the root all the way up, it is associated with the rainbow. Roy G. Biv, okay? White can evoke purity, cleanliness, and simplicity. Now this is very dumbed down that I'm reading you from just to get the gist across. If you'd like to look more into this, especially when it comes to marketing, which we are going to talk about a little bit in this segment, please do so. Black can evoke power, sophistication, and mystery. Orange can evoke enthusiasm, warmth, and creativity. Yellow can evoke happiness, energy, optimism, and positivity. So I want you to think about McDonald's right now. Close your eyes. What are the 2 colors that are associated with McDonald's? Red and yellow. Red can evoke passion, energy, danger, and urgency. Okay? Yellow can evoke happiness, energy, optimism, and positivity. So what the marketing of the Golden Arches does is evoke a sense of danger and urgency and necessity. And then yellow comes in and makes it all better with your fast food. That is highly, highly addictive. Also highly fucking toxic, okay? Just an example. There are others as well. We'll talk about Taco Bell because Taco Bell is very clearly also used by the Illuminati. They've come out straight with the commercials in the past few years with that bell letting you know. Okay, so brown can evoke stability, reliability, and earthiness. Purple can evoke luxury, spirituality, and creativity. Pink can evoke romance, nurturing, and femininity. And gray can evoke neutrality, balance, and sophistication. Which is interesting because gray is usually seen as a lower vibration, but it's not. Interesting. So anyway, color psychology can be used in design with marketing to help people connect with products, increase trust, and boost sales. On that, we're going to talk about grocery stores. Think about your local grocery store. Think about the cereal and snack aisles specifically, and think about where, next time you go to the grocery store, look at where the most colorful packaging is in relationship to the size of the human. Okay, what I'm talking about is the more colorful, more the marketing towards children is blatantly obvious when you understand the color psychology and marketing, and also how children are indoctrinated into consumerism. Okay, the cereal aisle is really the only thing you need to understand here. The colors, the pictures, the sugar, okay? Sugar is really toxic, as we know. Sugar, I make this analogy all the time because it's important to make, but for a long time I really struggled with eating disorders and my own sugar intake and cravings and addictive ways. I still do. And this is something that my son is also struggling with. I think it's an autistic trait, but we are finding our way out of that. But Niall is very much, most children are very into sugar, right? Halloween, great example of this. But anyway, the marketing to consume and towards children, the cereal aisle, the snack aisle, and the checkout placements is all important to understand when you are at the grocery store. If you're a parent, you know this. You know you avoid certain aisles, especially if you're on a budget, because of the ways in which the stores are set up to market young children, okay? Because young children will throw a tantrum and their parents will end up buying it for them. Consumer or capitalists know this. That's why they do it. This is not just, oh, what a coincidence. This is deeply embedded in psychology and indoctrination under capitalism to continue consuming and also to open the floodgates for a plethora of imbalances and problems later on when the brain is fully developed, okay? Now, what happens when we're going to go back to the movies and TV shows. What happens when a child is put into a space of fight or flight, because they don't really have a concept of their empathy at that age, but they understand the trauma. Again, this can be taken as a false memory. So it can cause the child to stay their nervous system in a space of fight or flight, which is also paired with, heavy sugar consumption, which is what the marketing in the cereal aisle that I'm talking about, the candy at the checkout, everything. We don't go in the grocery store anymore. Niall started getting really bad tantrums and stuff in the snack aisle and stuff, and I have an understanding of this, so we just avoid it altogether. At this point in time, again, my child is in these incredibly important first few years. There's a fine balance, though, because you don't want to do too much that they want to rebel, Okay, so in addition to the psychology of colors, let's look for the symbology within children's movies, talking specifically about animals. Most children's movies are animals having a human existence or experience in relation to the ability to feel and whatnot. The most important things in these first few years for children to learn through the indoctrination process are colors and animals. So those are the things that are used to pertain to them, okay? Now, behaviors or reactions, again, that we see in these movies. There's this one movie I hated that my nephew really liked, and I had to watch it all the time. It was like a knockoff of Madagascar. What was it called? It was something about, I don't know. It was awful, though. I hated it. And I hated it because I analyzed these things all the time, and I was in college at the time. But when I had to babysit him, he would only, Into the Wild, I think is what it was called. God, it was such an awful movie. But again, it's these protagonists of animals having these human experiences. And I think that's all children's movies. I mean, we grew up with, like, fairy tales, but they were still very, each of the fairy tales still had their, like, animal friend sidekick or whatever. Like, Cinderella had Guth Guth. My favorite, that little chubby mouse. Anyway, okay, so the symbology is animals, very colorful, right? The kids are roped in. Everything else from that point is pretty much subliminal. Of course, their minds can't comprehend what's going on the way they're being indoctrinated. But as the parent or caregiver, that is our responsibility, right? Behaviors and reactions that come from these movies too, because children are like a fresh slate, they take on the behaviors of the characters in which they like or resonate with, right? That's why we did a lot of Daniel Tiger, because Daniel Tiger is relatively chill as fuck, and he was very helpful to my son, and still is. He's a comfort when we don't really watch it regularly anymore. But when we do, Niall feels at comfort, right? He feels safe, and it's like an old friend, right? I've also kept my child away from children in the ways in which most people don't. I don't see childhood social word. I don't see childhood social socialization as important as making sure your child has a firm foundation of who the fuck they are. Children are mean. Children don't even understand their own ways of being, the ways in which the adults in their life have molded them. And so I do my best to keep our social interactions very limited, and when they are in a space of doing so, like we've done the kids college, we did art space to get around other children, but it is something that is, I'm more concerned with my child's emotional regulation, his ability to stay centered in who he is, his own idea of self in this time in his life, especially since he does have an autistic diagnosis. He is the weird kid, he is different. I'm the different parent. We are different. So I want to put that here and remind you that it's okay to make decisions for your family that are not socially acceptable, especially in a sick society in which we live. It's important to guard and protect our children's innocence and their soul. My innocence was taken from me at a very young age. I think a lot of people have had that experience. I know a lot of people have had that experience. It leads to mental health crises, emotional crises. It leads to addiction. It leads to getting yourself into unsafe situations, relationships. So for me, as a parent, my most important task is to let my child experience childhood, allow him to have a safe space to explore himself, to understand who he is, and to be very careful about what comes in. This isn't how, I'm not trying to protect him from the world like my parents did. They kept me, well, because they themselves were not aware of everything going on by choice. Niall has an understanding of how the world works because I show him some of the things that are happening, but I let him know that, those are our friends. It's a very nuanced and delicate place to be as a parent. Letting your children understand how the world works, especially since I am raising a black boy, letting him have this space in his childlike innocence at this time is incredibly important. Making sure he knows who he is comfortable in his self-expression, allowing him to be himself without any sort of societal or social expectation is very important for me. So again, personality traits, behaviors, or reactions that children pick up from these movies or TV shows are usually inappropriate. And I put that Pixar bought Disney in here for a reason, because when Pixar took over, the innuendos, the inside jokes, a lot of that stuff, most of those movies are, what's the word? A lot of those movies are put together to appease the adults who are accompanying the child to the movie through the thing, right? The pandemic has changed everything, though. Remember when movies weren't a thing, movie theaters weren't a thing, and the ways that people started getting back into social settings? Really contemplate that, think about that. because the pandemic has been a game changer in the ways in which, first of all, we raise our children. That's one of the reasons that I don't really care about, I mean, I care about it, but like, I don't center it as the most important thing is child's social settings, because Niall, my son, grew up in the pandemic. His first year was the first year of the pandemic. Parents took on tons of emotional and societal labor through the pandemic, and everyone just wants to forget that we've experienced that. Our children were quarantined. We were told that we had to cover our faces. Do you know what that does to our children? Everyone's like, why is your child nonverbal? And I'm like, sure, he's autistic, but for these infancy years, the prenatal stage was pre-pandemic, but his infancy stage, pandemic. I don't think people realize how much we read lips, how much we rely on facial expression and body movement in our communication. So when a child has been quarantined from that in their most formidable years, yeah, it makes a difference, okay? And society wants to pretend like that never happened and is pretending like everything's fine. We are in World War III. We are facing a civil war right now. We are still in a pandemic, at least one, probably others. There are multiple genocides being screened on our phones. This is not a normal world that we are living in, and these children are not either. So, because the reality of the situation is so intense, what we allow our children to participate in when it comes to entertainment does need to be a space that is safe, in my opinion. I'm not a very strict mother at all, but I am very strict about the ways in which the system is going to try and control my child. That's what I'm strict about. I'm not really strict about behaviors or things. I am very strict about how this society will impact my child, because we are living on the outskirts of society, because I have too much information in my own brain, and because of the things I've been through, because of the things his father has been through. We are raising our child different. We are cycle breaking these things to the best of our ability. Sure, we make mistakes. Sure, we fall into normalcy sometimes. But, like, these stupid holidays and shit, we don't go all gun-ho on these. Niall's concept of our society is very different than the concept of the neighbor's kids' society. I do that on design, or by design, on purpose. Again, our focus is emotional regulation and understanding self at this point in life. We don't care if he can count to 100. We don't care if he can say his alphabet. That shit is all a part of the indoctrination pipeline. The most important thing is that he understands his emotions, why they're happening, why he's feeling that way, and can get himself out of that situation. Because most of us never learned it. Most of us never learned emotional regulation. Therefore, we have to consume to fill those holes. He's awake now. I'm getting passionate. We're hitting 30 minutes. Thanks for being here. Next week, we're going to talk about commercials and jingles, so that we can all liberate ourselves from these systems to the best of our ability. Have a good one.